Welcome everyone to episode 10 of Developer Dialogue. I'm your host, Jean, the Strategy Wargamer. I am going solo today, so I don't have my co-host with me, but I have two incredible guests on. We brought Marco back from last month, so we could dive in a little bit more on a couple of key subjects that we want to talk about. And we also have Paolo, who also helps Marco with marketing on the Slitherine side. Welcome, guys. How are you doing?
Hi.
Hi, all good. Yeah, all good. Thanks for having us again, Jin.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it because you guys are the marketing wizards behind Slitherine, and you guys are basically the public face of Slitherine, especially you, Marco. Every time I see a stream, I always see you.
Yeah. We tend to have we try to sort of give a face to our team. Because the community is key to us, so we want to make sure that we have the community knows who they are talking to, and also where the news are coming from, and where if they want to ask something, they know have a face in mind they're asking this to. So it's important for us.
Yeah, that I always get that with when you guys are on your live stream. I think you guys started something recently. I think it's correct me if I'm wrong. Is it called Tea Time?
Yeah, it's called Tea Time. It's a new format we're trying to launch. It's really a one-to-one, very much like community-oriented chat. So we take questions from the community. We do some little announcements. We maybe comment in the future. We maybe comment also on what's happening in general in the strategy gaming market. It's really an open chat with our fans out there.
Okay, cool. Before we start the interview, I always ask everybody, what inspired you to devote your career to making strategy games, to dive into the strategy gaming industry?
I'll let Paolo go with this one because he's got a more interesting story than mine.
Ooh.
Your story is also interesting. Yes, basically, I began to play video games in late 80s, and the first video games I played were RPGs. I began with Question 2 and Ultima Default. That is probably the best RPG I've ever played, and with strategy games from Microprose and SSI. I remember the first game I played was the Vietnam title from Microprose with only 5 scenarios, something unbelievable now with games with tons of scenarios and materials you can play. And since then, I always played, all the time played strategy games and role play, even if I began to play other titles, because few years after I began to work in a paper magazine. At the time there was no internet and no websites. I began to write for probably the most known video games magazine in Italy. That was a K magazine. It was just a K letter. And then to be fast, I mean, I began to work in the industry as a journalist and became the editor-in-chief of Giochi Premium Computer. That was basically PC Gamer Italy. And even if I managed all the magazine and all the stuff for every kind of video games, from sports to action to shooters, my niche stayed the strategy games and role plays. In the last 10 years of my video game journalist career, I began also to supervise the cover mounting. The cover mounting of the magazine meant that I had to find video games we can attach to the paper magazine. Something unique to the Italian market, because I know that in the UK it was almost forbidden, so there were no examples of this kind of practical. But it was really interesting because the people could buy the magazine for 10 euros, actually 8 euros, and have the magazine and a full game, like for example Mafia or Tomb Raider or games like that. In this new job, I met Marco, and because he was the head of Slitherine in Italy. And since I really loved strategy games, I did my best to persuade my bosses to have at least a couple of strategy games each year, and they were from Slitherine. And I knew at that time we are speaking about the early 2010 years. I knew almost all the people in Italy in the video games market because it's not that big, and but I soon discovered that Marco was a really interesting guy, and we became friends. And so when I left the PC Gamer Italy work, I began to be the editor in chief of a magazine about technology, like a smartphone and new televisions and new apps, and so we maintained our usual lunch. We had a lunch at least once in a month, where we chatted about the video game industry in general, like we do now with our tea times with all the people. And when in 2018 I decided that I was a bit fed up of doing the journalist in the video game niche after almost 30 years.
Oh, wow.
I just told Marco because I was looking for another job, basically because Marco knew everybody in the games industry, both in Italy and in Europe. So I just told Marco something like, "Hi Marco, I'm a bit fed up to doing the journalist, so I just checking if you know somebody that is crazy enough to get a 40 years old guy that never did anything on the other barrier on the other side of the video games." And basically, in less than 2 months, Marco told me that they were looking for a PR in Milan, and that was awesome for me because working in Slitherine is fantastic for many ways. But one of them is that it's like to work in London but staying in Milan. And since I have a family with 2 kids, for me it's much better to stay around at my home and not moving to UK or Germany. And that's fantastic because it's basically a dream come true. Another one after being a journalist for 30 years in the video games, because I really like strategy games. Is something that I do for passion. The last review I did before joining Slitherine, and I didn't know at the time that I was joining Slitherine, was about Fog 2, the original Fog 2 game, the ancient one, that are rated 9 out of 10 on IGN Italy. You can find it my review on Metacritic. And I also love strategy games in the real world. I mean, with the toy soldiers, with teen soldiers, because I played and I'm playing a lot, except for this year of that COVID forced us to stay at home. I play a lot of 3D war games, strategy games, from Ancient Warfare to World War II to Modern Wars, and I like to paint miniatures. So it's something that I really like in my whole life. For example, during the holiday time for Christmas, the most played game for me on Steam was Field of Glory 2 Medieval. I played 35 hours in 2 weeks because I began to play the beta as you did because we sent you the game.
Wow. Yeah, so you're very passionate about it. What about you, Marco?
Well, Gene, I'm going to disappoint you a bit, but I wasn't a born strategy games lover. As you know, I started in IDOS. Well, it was late '90s, and the first products I was working on were, Tomb Raider and Championship Manager, and very mass markety type games. But I soon realized that what I like about the marketing job in the gaming industry, especially, is the fact that you can carve yourself very nice little niches, and the niches those don't have to be little as in in small in numbers. They can be little in small in scope and the number of products and the type of products. So I developed a career really working on these type of products. And my first real niche was flight simulators. We were doing DLCs for Microsoft Flight Simulator in the early 2000, and it was great because you had this community of fans who were developing super detailed stuff, very much like in mods today, right? They are, or sometimes they prove to be even better than some developers. They're so good, and then that's great because the niche means that you have a very clear target that you have to please, right? When you develop games like Assassin's Creed or FIFA, right? Your public is so big, you will have a large amount of people you will please, a large amount of people you will displease, and it's always the case, right? Of course, if you're not doing Cyberpunk, that's another story. But but with the niche, if you displease a big amount of players, then this will have a tremendous effect on your sales and on your overall equity, right, as a brand. So being able to develop a brand like Slitherine over 20 years with such a big awareness of the brand within the niche market, and have maintain a very high equity and a very high perception of quality to across the board. We have haters, of course. We do have haters, but after 20 years having such a loyal community, such a loyal following, means that we've done our job right. And it's amazing to see that happening. After so much time, many companies struggle to maintain their equity for such a long time, and we've managed to do it over the years. And I think this is our biggest achievement. And for strategy games, to be honest, I think that what grabs me about strategy games, especially about turn-based, is the idea of playing an extra turn. And I think that it doesn't matter if it's a light strategy game like Worms. It is I was playing Worms back in the days, and it was it's a very fun turn-based strategy game. You really want to play the next turn, right? Or if it's a complex war game because you want to see what's happening next. It's just this idea of of seeing the time go by and just realizing that you've enjoyed it so much. But at the same time you've used your brain and you've done good for your brain cells, which is also very good.
So I wanted to ask you both, what's the most challenging aspect of your jobs? Because I interact with you guys on a weekly basis, and I see that you guys do a lot of work through Steam, through Twitch, through YouTube. So I'm kind of curious, what's the most challenging aspect of your daily job?
Well, I guess there's two things, right? There's the aspect of, because we sell a niche product, we have to be very careful in making sure that the products are different enough so that every experience is different. And this is of course from a development perspective, but also from the marketing perspective. It is very hard to pinpoint these aspects, these different aspects, and make them look like, right, this is going to be a different experience for you, right? So especially when it comes to increasing the size, right? So you've got, say that our audience is 100 people, then you've got, within this 100 people, you've got the fans of Operational World War II, the fans of battle-based Napoleonic. There's a huge amount of differentiation between all these aspects. But the real challenge is to increase this audience, increase this 100 number, and the other point is making sure that you try to sort of cross genres and types of games so that you capture a wider amount of this specific audience. Because when in 20 years, you've done like 100 different World War II turn-based strategy games, it's kind of hard to come up with a story that's different enough that, from all the stories you've told, 100 times. The struggle is always to find this angle, and sort of to capture imagination of people, and they're willing to sort of give it a go, because it's not cheap, right? We don't have demos or things. So, and luckily, stuff like YouTube videos and the content creators and so on are helping us a lot in that, because they are, it's almost like having a demo, but you don't have to play, right? You watch a video, say, all right, this might be interesting. I want to give it a go. And the more videos you look at, you watch, the more you're potentially interested in buying something. So that's the first big aspect, making sure that you find the right angle to communicate the product. The second one is that this market is freaking horrible. It changes every 2 weeks. There's no like, what's going to happen in 2 years' time? What I'm developing today is for a market that I don't know where I'm going to get, right? Take a War in the East. You start developing War in the East 10 years before the actual launch.
Wow.
What is the market going to be? What is it going to be when you launch the product? Is it going to be, streaming? Is it going to be subscription based? Is it going to be, PC is going to be dead?
Hopefully not.
all iPads, but you always work on this idea of, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. What's the next epic? What's the next console? What's the next platform? What's the next business model? So it's really hard to sort of plan ahead in a proper way. So that's a big challenge for, especially if you work in business development, you really don't know what to do. So it is a big challenge for the marketing side of things, definitely.
So coming out of that, so I'm just kind of curious. You mentioned War in the East was in development for 10 years?
Well, yeah.
Wow.
War in the East 2 has been in development far before War in the West released, so it's definitely more, 10 years.
Wow.
But games like Distant Worlds, 10 years. Armored Brigade, 10 years.
Wow.
It's not a rule, but, development teams are small. They have, maybe they have other occupations sometimes. Maybe, it's not a process that's like a 2 years time process. It's not like, especially for deep war games, it's not something that you plan in a way that like a Battlestar Galactica, where you have a deep development team, you have commitments with the license holder, you've got like a lot of rules to follow, and think about testing a War in the East. A beta test for a War in the East can last 2 years, because you have a set of tests, you play test it for 3 months, then you come up with problems, right? You go back and and you have to sort of also test the late game. And testing late games in these games are is not an easy thing, because you've got to play it for a huge amount of hours, and your play testers out there, they don't work full time as play testers of War in the East, so they have to sort of give it all the time. So it's a very long process, and even now, we're planning, the War in the East is planned to release in Q1. We're in the final stages of testing and so on. If a problem comes up in the very late game, so either we'll be able to release a patch, or we'll have to go back and and fix it and retest it, so the game can be postponed. So it's an iterative process, but it's also a very risky process, because you don't know what you're going to find.
Kind of piggybacking off some of the things that you're saying, and I wanted to ask kind of Paolo this, because I know, Paolo, you work with the content creators, the strategy game influencers. I was kind of curious, like, how many strategy game influencers do you work with, like, on an average week to help them produce content?
Well, I've got a list that is after 2 years. Almost 3 years. I'm working in Slitherine as PR. I have my list of contacts, and it's constantly growing. So now is around 800, 1,000 guys
Wow.
in total. Obviously, we have we have the core, let's say, like people like you or Eric or Matthew, that are people that influencer and content creator that really enjoy strategy games, and we are confident that we can work smoothly, and so it's often is people like you asks me before the game is out, or I have the code that they want to play that game, like War in the East or the next Panzer Corps DLC. Similar. The main challenge is to find and work with content creators that does video games in general, and they want to try games like ISBM or the next coming Starship Troopers, that are games that are probably wider. They appeal a wider audience, and so they are going to be interesting even for influencers that are not strictly in the war game niche. In general, since Slitherine and Matrix Games release at least one content each week on the average, we normally I normally have the chance to speak with people, with content creators in the strategy niche like you and historical gamer and Tortuga Power, and so at least once in a week, but probably more. I mean, because we have a new game, or I'm asking if you like the game I sent you the week before, or I'm asking you if you are okay to have the game that you are releasing, like Field of Glory to Medieval, 1 week before the release, or two, or things like that. Another thing that we are trying to do, and Marco and all the team is full of ideas constantly, like the tea time we just launched last week, is to try new ways to connect with you, and in general with the people that likes strategy games. So I'm speaking also of journalists, for example, from all the part of the world, is to find new ways to cooperate and have interesting things about our games before the release. For example, one thing we did that was really interesting was when we were releasing Warhammer 40,000 Gladius, we had a special set of news about. It was like a Lonely Planet guide about the fauna of the and the flora of the planet, because while the races, the factions of Warhammer 40,000 Gladius were known because they were Space Marines, Imperium, Necron, and Orcs. We had some new items, things, dangerous creatures on the planet. It was something that we created. So we added this feature about what the players can find on the surface, and instead of doing a simple list, we did lonely planet like list, telling the people, telling the journalist and the influencer about the things on the planet, as they were on visiting the planet for tourism. Another thing we did last year, no, 2 years ago, was the promo video for Field of Glory Empires that was set in ancient Rome in Latin, for instead of having the speaking language in the trailer, as always in English. We tried to do it in Latin, in ancient Latin, and it worked very well, because the people were a bit amazed about the fact that we had a trailer in an ancient language.
Yeah, I remember when you guys did that. It was a lot of people on on Twitch and a couple other areas were talking about how awesome that was that you guys did it in Latin. I kind of wanted to dive, I guess, into the meat of it, of the actual episode. So I wanted to kind of talk about developers. At any one time, how many titles are your developers working on at any one time? Like, how many current active projects does Slitherine currently have at any one time?
Right now we have. It's a bit hard because I can cheat and tell you we have 100, but that's including also small DLCs and things. But I guess that a good answer would be that we are currently working with almost 60 active developers.
Wow.
It's about 58. These active developers are either working on new unannounced game, or on a project that's been announced and yet to be released, or on something that's been released and is still active, as in, developing a DLC or making significant patches, or planning for number 2 or whatever it is. These are the developers we work with that are active. I mean, there's a lot of smaller entities then that are not specifically active on something, that maybe just delivering fixes on games, but that's another story. We are each developer may be working on a single project or on more projects. Take 2x3 for instance. They're working on War in East, but I also have as the follow up to Steel Panthers going, and that's that's going to happen later on. But there's teams like the Byzantine Games guys, they're doing Field of Glory only. But then they're doing Field of Glory, and they're also doing the DLC for the Ancients. So it's very hard to sort of pinpoint in real the actual number, but it's a huge number.
Yeah, 50. But 58 is wow. I mean, that's a lot. So I mean, kind of theoretically, there is literally 58 titles at any one time. 50 at the minimum, 58 titles in operation at any one time.
Yeah, we have. I'm just opening up the release list now.
And feel free to send that over to me.
We have. Say that this year we'll have around 20 plus new games.
Wow.
Then we have another 20 plus DLCs coming along, and then we have projects planned. We are now looking into 2023. We already have projects for 2023 assigned and planned. And we're always looking for new opportunities. I guess that what's different between us and some other publishers is that we're not focusing specifically on only AAA huge things. We're trying to sort of differentiate and find even smaller things, especially through the KProject, smaller things that are a bit on the edge of our space, or have very cool gameplay ideas. And these might succeed, might not succeed, we don't know. But we are, if we think there's something there, then we'll definitely sign that up. And then we have, I was saying last week on the Tea Time, we have 4 different games in development that are based on IPs, on big franchises, a bit like we did on Battlestar Galactica, really. These are still unannounced. Then we have Starship Troopers, which is the 5th one of the lot. We're working on big projects like the new Master of Magic. We have a lot of very big games in development, and we have smaller things as well.
So I kind of want to touch on a couple of those things that you mentioned. I guess the first thing I'll kind of dive into is, since you mentioned IP, I know you're the IP wizard, and you're the one responsible for Battlestar Galactica and and Starship Troopers. I know that you're the top guy on how all that comes out to be. So I'm kind of curious, how do you do that? How do you bring aboard an IP? Like, what's the magic that, like, how do you do that? Where do you even get started in such an endeavor?
Well, to be honest, it really depends. The Battlestar Galactica Deadlock game idea came out because we had a developer with an engine and with a game system that was very focused on big big ships, and and the system itself was lending perfectly to Battlestar Galactica. So I approached Universal saying, we've got this game with this engine, and we'd like to make a upgrade version to Battlestar Galactica, and that's how it started basically. Some of the times it's just about an opportunity, because over the years I developed contacts with basically all of the major guys in the both movie and TV industry. Oh, wow. Sometimes it's them approaching us saying, we've got this big relaunch, or we've got this opportunity. Do you want to work with us? And they know we're niche. They know we won't develop, a big Star Wars action game. But because of that, they also know that we'll give their IP the right treatment. We won't just, stick a label on the box and just release. So that's I guess the secret is to keep the quality high enough so that they want to keep working with us. I remember back in the days, I think it was almost now 10, 15 years ago, Warner Brothers issued this big statement where they were like, we won't work with anyone unless reviews of the game are 7 or plus or something like that. It was, they were like super, careful in giving their license to anyone who was not going to do a good job in terms of quality. And I don't think it's always about quality. It's about giving the fans what they are looking for. Again, if you're looking at Starship Troopers, for instance, there is a niche there. It's the niche of the fans of Starship Troopers. So the question is, how can you craft a game that's good for that niche? It might displease a big amount of people who are not looking for, this specific strategy game. But what we're looking at here is that we want to please the Starship Troopers fans, because that's where your core community is, and we'll do that for all the IPs we work with, and hopefully we'll make a, when we did Warhammer 40K Armageddon, it was the same, right? It was, what is a good war game with the Warhammer label, And there were a lot of people saying, this game is impossible. It's too hard. I can't play this. Yeah, okay, because you're not our audience. You're not who we're trying to approach. So over the years, trying to create a name for ourselves in this aspect, it's been a big challenge. But I guess that and in answering your question is, we managed to sort of achieve that and make sure that our name is synonymous of, we do a good job with your label, with your IP.
Yeah, and you guys definitely have done that, especially with BSG. One of the questions that I kind of following up on that was the larger IPs. So like IPs like Star Trek, Star Wars, Harry Potter, things like that. Are they harder to sign on than IPs that have been retired? Like a good example would be Battlestar Galactica, which I think the series ended in the mid-2000s.
No, they're not harder.
Oh, okay.
They're not harder at all. They're just more expensive. And when you talk about creating gaming experiences that are for very specific audiences, your return on investment is not going to be, you know, a huge $1 million, a million seller, right? You're not going to sell millions of copies of a Battlestar Galactica war game. So if the license is too expensive, then you won't make your money back. And there are some, IP owners that will ask, for stupid money and just because they just don't want to work with you, or I remember, I won't name the specifics, but we had a very good fit for a board game back in maybe 5 years ago, and the license owner just came back to us with this very with an insane request, saying this is the number we're looking at for as a bare minimum for anything we want to discuss, and we had to say no, but it's a way, it's a missed opportunity for them, because we'll always go for something that works economically and financially for us. So
I'm kind of curious, like when you work with the IP holder, do they kind of put any restrictions or give you any guidelines that you and the developer has to follow, or do they usually just give you a free hand?
no, they never do a free hand. They will always have specific rules to follow, and some are very strict, some are not strict at all. Some are very annoying. Some are just delaying things over and over again. Sometimes you get some feedback and you realize that they really don't have a clue what they're talking about. But mostly now, especially in the movie industry, the licensing department that deal with games all have producers. So anytime you work with Universal or with the likes, you will have a producer assigned to you, and these producers usually come from video games industry. So they will kind of know, the process, gameplay, what's a build, and how it works, and all that kind of stuff. Because the process of developing a game is very specific, and if you go outside your industry, it's very hard to find someone who's in the knowledge of, right, here's what I'm talking about. Can you send me a version of the game? Right. Do you have a Steam code? Yes. Okay. Here's the Steam key. How do I launch it? How do, all this kind of stuff. It might be, super simple to us, but it's, for anyone outside, it can prove to be very challenging sometimes. So, but yeah, anything has to be approved. Some of them also ask you a full gameplay video of the game, so you have to play it for hours and hours and hours so they can actually see everything.
Oh wow.
They will never watch everything, but they just want to have for the records, I guess. But they want to have they want to approve every single thing, the units, the look and feel, the UI, the marketing, the artwork. Everything is an approval process.
Wow.
And it's usually pretty painful because they always have a comment, even if something is perfect, and sometimes they just deliberately do something wrong so that they can pinpoint on what's something on the wrong things, and they just don't, come up with stupid ideas. But it's a thing you have to factor in when you start developing in new development, and especially during the pandemic on the projects we have in development, there has been issues from either side, us being slow and not sticking to the timeline, and them being very delaying the project for various reasons. I think the movie industry is now in such a state where they will need more projects, they will need more IPs being sold. Because of course, they had the revenues going, down dramatically, and we've suffered that as well, because some of the teams have been I've seen departure of people. There's sort of firing going on, so
wow.
It's an industry that has a lot of issues, and of course, as a license holder, we suffer from that as well.
So I guess we can move on to Starship Troopers. So I'm kind of curious. Can you tell us the story behind Starship Troopers? How you kind of like hooked up the developer with the publisher? Like, how did all that start to begin? How was it born?
Starship Troopers is a perfect example of a a license holder coming to us and
Oh
saying, "We've
wow.
got this opportunity. Are you looking for opportunities as well?" And we thought about it. We thought about it because we were coming from the very successful experience of Battlestar Galactica, where as you said, a license that was, you know, dead in terms of, I mean, it was not active anymore. There was nothing in production. So, and how, with a huge heritage, we had a very good response from the public, from the core fans. So we said, it might be a similar case, right? The public is smaller, it's a different audience, but there are a lot of fans out there. So what do we do to capture their attention? And so Lucas at the Aristocrats, designer of Order of Battle, is a great designer. He's got loads of very good ideas. He's very careful about look and feel and how a game delivers itself visually. So we wanted to we suggested to him, he was looking for a new project. So we suggested him, are you interested? Yes, we sat down with him, drew the core of the game, what it was going to be like, presented to Sony Pictures. Sony Pictures liked the idea, and so we started from there. Then we developed the game for about, I think, 18 months, 2 years, and then we announced it last year. And when we announced it, the hypothesis of are the fans going to be happy about it like they were on Battlestar Galactica blew out of proportion. And now Starship Troopers is such a big anticipated piece of gaming that we had to go back to drawing board in so many aspects, because there are so many people out there anticipating the game. We really want it to be super top notch. So we almost spent the whole of 2020 in the middle of the pandemic redesigning the game. So it's a game that is almost it's almost like betting for us, because if you go on Steam right now, the game is solidly in the top 10 of most anticipated strategy game for the year, alongside very big games. So it's the first time we have to face this level of anticipation. Usually our numbers are building over time rather than just big day one stuff. So we have to be very careful, and Sony knows that. They're with us on it. They're helping us a lot, and we really hope that we'll make the Starship Troopers fans happy.
You mentioned that you had to make some big changes from the original concept to the current model that you have now, because it received so much attention. I'm kind of curious, like, what kind of changes did you make, and why did you have to make them?
Well, I can't really go into specifics because we still have to announce the gameplay and stuff like that. But I can, in terms of wider scope, what we had to do was basically reassess the positioning of the game, right? So we started off saying, how hardcore do we want it to be? How war gamey do we want it to be? Is it going to be all about supply lines and deep strategy and all based on map elements and all that kind of stuff, or do we want to make it a bit lighter for a lighter market and so on? So the positioning of the game was always the key aspect. When we announced the game, we clearly saw that going too hardcore was going to limit our opportunities and disappoint a lot of people. And this doesn't mean that we were won't be doing a deep strategy game, but it means that we have to be very careful in how that depth is delivered and communicated to players. So it's like saying, both Strategy Command and Panzer Corps are, deep war games, but Panzer Corps is definitely more approachable and lighter to the eyes than a Strategy Command is. So I guess this is the main reason why we had to go to the drawing board, some of the design elements, some of the visual elements. And we're still doing that we're iterating. It's just like crazy stuff. But yeah, that's the main thing, I guess. Positioning means where it sits within the market, where it sits within the competition, and what is the goal of the overall project in terms of target audience.
And my hard job is to tell the developer, the brand managers, and even my boss Marco to shut up and don't tell around things like this.
So I guess moving on to KProject. Actually, before we kind of dive into KProject, can you give us a quick elevator pitch for people that are not familiar with KProject?
KProject is an indie fund, an indie development fund that we have set up during the pandemic, and it's almost it's planned to be a self-sustained fund that auto generates more projects, basically through the fact that we are going to collect money out of our own share for every K project that is then going to fund new projects, and so you go. So it's really a way of contributing to the funding of smaller games that are potentially going to be not seeing the light of day if they don't get this a little bit of extra help.
For KProject, do you have to, for applying, I would say, for proposing a project to Slitherine through KProject, does someone need to have a development staff ready, or is it something where like an individual can go propose a project and then you help them set up a development team?
No, it's really made for developers with an existing playable prototype or a vertical slice or something that they need to take to completion. Anything that's just not ready within 6-9 months or 12 months is very hardly going to be a K project. But it's probably going to fit in something else, but it's not a K project for us. That's because if you want this thing to work, you can't withhold this stream of revenues going through, right? You need the revenue to generate more revenue. Sorry, to generate more funds, to generate more revenue. And if you've got projects that are too long in development, you'll end up, stopping the stream, and the whole project premises falls apart.
Okay. So I would say the last question that I have would be, let's say an individual wants to propose a project to Slitherine or Matrix Games. I did go across your forums. I did see that where you have a section that says submit a game idea. Do you guys, how does that whole system work? Do you guys take those game ideas and put them like on a board? Do you seriously consider those ideas?
Yeah, we seriously consider every idea we get submitted. We have a committee that's made of basically 3 people, rotating people from departments. Basically, someone from marketing, someone from production, and someone from design will look at the game, and then there will be like, if all 3 agree this is a good opportunity, we'll pursue the opportunity. If 2 out of 3 will say yes, it's a good opportunity, we'll form a further investigation and dive into the project a bit more. If only one or zero say, it's a good opportunity for us, we'll just communicate it's not good enough, or it's not fitting our guidelines, or it's not fitting the catalog, or but every project is being evaluated properly. We have constant meetings about it, and we tend to focus on projects with a good core, different idea, right? So if there is something that the game has that's different enough that makes it a cool indie project, because I guess that nowadays, strategy games suffer from a bit of stagnation in terms of creativity. Over the last, over 2020, I think we're probably the only company that released so many games with different cool angles. I don't see anyone else did that. We did Shadow Empire, we did ICBM, we did Stirring Abyss, we did, and they all have very unique aspects. You might like them, not like them, but they have very unique aspects. And that's the goal, right? What is unique about that game that can be, delivered to the market? And I think it's especially in strategy games these days, you can get that basically only from indie game developers, because they're only ones willing to take risks, because it's a hard market. If you displease someone, you get hammered. So
this is more generally, I got this from a fan. So in regards to upcoming games, is it possible for the fan community to get a manual of the game before its release? A good example would be like War in the East too. I had a fan that was kind of asking, like, is it possible to get like an advanced copy on the Slitherine website before a game release, so when the game drops, they automatically know how to play it?
Well, it's not a question for me. Probably Marco is more right to answer this one, but I think it would not be a problem, because I don't see any problem. Marco, what to tell about this?
Well, the main problem is that the War in East 2 manual is still being written. The main reason I'm saying this, Gene, is that to write a manual, you need the final game screenshots to attach to the manual. And so you might have the text ready, but you need to drop the screenshots in to illustrate what you're talking about. And usually screenshots are the last thing you grab when the game is final. Otherwise you get, we moved this button from here to here, the screenshot's not valid anymore. So that's why the manuals are coming in kind of late in the process. It's something that you do, especially for these big games. The manual for War in East is going to be in excess of 400 pages.
Wow.
That there is a lot of proofreading, lots of stuff that needs to be done before it actually releases. We are at the moment, I think the War in East 2 manual is being laid out, so we'll have it probably ready within the next 3 or 4 weeks before we send it to printers. So that's going to be probably when we'll start releasing bits of the manual or the entire manual. If not the entire manual, we don't know about that. But so there is a limitation on how early we can deliver stuff, especially when it comes to manuals.
Okay. And I guess my final question is, and this is for both of you, if you had to choose one game out of your whole catalog, which is very vast, what would be that game? Like if you were stuck on a desert island kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Paolo, go for it.
For me, it's Warhammer 40,000 Gladius. I mean, because I really like deep strategy games like Shadow Empire or Field of Glory, but I think that if I have to be stuck on a desert island for 1 month, the game I'd like to play right now is something that is that you can replay every time. And since I really love Warhammer 40,000 background, I think I'd go with Gladius with all the DLCs. And I hope to take, together with Gladius, some miniatures to paint, so I can I can have a true vacation of 1 month.
Nice choice.
Mhm. Is that going to be one of our games, or is it going to be some games from anyone?
I mean, you could choose anyone, I guess, but at least for me, is like usually with Slitherine and Matrix games, they offer a lot of time for the value. So like for me, it would probably be War in the Pacific, because I know with that game, if I'm stuck on a desert island for the rest of my life, it would probably take me. I'd be able to play 1 or 2 games during that entire period, because they take up so much time.
Yeah, well, I think you're right. I was going to say War in the East, just because there's always something new to learn and to be amazed about. So it's definitely going to sort of suck up a lot of my time, and I'll take the manual with me as well, so that I can actually know what I'm doing, or Command. Either one of these two. It's probably Command is even more in the direction of, because then I can create my own scenarios and play them as well. So it's you've got that on top. But I really hope not to be stuck in a desert island, to be honest. I've had enough of isolation this year.
Yeah, I know. I feel that same way. Well, that's all my questions. Do you guys, did I miss anything, or do you guys want to add anything before we finish up?
No, I'd like to thank you, Gene, for doing this podcast, because I've also listened to the other ones, and you do a great job at depicting what's happening out there, and not only keeping it informal and chatty, and I really like what you're doing. So congratulations, and thank you for having us twice in the space of a month. I think your customers are going to be bored.
No, I mean, it's an honor having you guys, because you guys are, you're the, what do you call it, the spearhead of the strategy gaming industry. So like having you guys is kind of like having the pulse of strategy game on radio, on the podcast. So, the more information we get from you guys is kind of like where we know where strategy game is going. And, there are other strategy game publishers out there, but I feel they're more generalized, and they kind of appeal more to the casual gaming market. I feel like when we talk to you guys, Slitherine and Matrix, that it appeals to the grognard in us, for people that want to play Panzer Corps, which is, grognard / general, all the way to people that want to like go full on grognard for like War in the East too. So, I feel like with you guys, it's and you guys have so much passion for it too, like how you reach out to the community with this tea time now, which I'm a big fan of. So I really appreciate you guys coming on this show, and I can't wait to see what you guys bring out this year. I'm so very excited, because your last announcement on Tea Time, I was like, just with Armored Brigade, I was like 200 new units, and like my mind just like blew when that happened. I was like, 200 new units. I just couldn't believe it. I just couldn't even visualize it. So, yeah, it's amazing.
Well, thank you again, Gene, and you have a great 2021, and we'll hope to get a more normal life as soon as possible.
Thanks, guys, for coming on, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Thank you very much.